This video is supported by Skillshare.
Predicting the future is hard, especially these days. And paradoxically, the people who seem to have the most trouble with it are the people who are most involved in the making of it. Take Robert Metcalfe, for example. He was a co-inventor of the Ethernet and holds a Medal of Technology, and yet in 1995, when asked about the internet, he said, quote, "I predict the internet will go spectacularly supernova and in 1996 catastrophically collapse." Yeah. Or former Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, who stated in 2007 that, quote, "There's no chance that the iPhone is going to get any significant market share." Or hell, YouTube founder Steve Chen, who downplayed the success of his own creation in 2005 by saying, "I just don't think there's that many videos I want to watch." Of course, today the internet is woven into almost every facet of our lives. Apple sold the 1 billionth iPhone only 10 years later, and YouTube, well, it owns your ass right now. We live in the age of disruption, and it happens so fast sometimes it's hard for us to even keep up. Remember when Netflix just mailed you DVDs? I do, because I still got one. What's even in this? Platoon, Disc 1. Only have half of it. Thank God for no late fees. Companies that held practically a monopoly in their industries for decades went bankrupt in the blink of an eye. No industry is safe, especially and including transportation. Predicting the future right now is a fool's errand. So how about this fool takes a crack at it? So gather around, kids, while Joe Stradamus whips out his crystal ball and takes a look at the future of cars. Now, before I jump into this video, I know a lot of you guys are going to want to get down in the comments and say something like, "Joe, I think you're stealing from Tony Seba just a little bit here," and I want to tell you, no, I'm stealing a lot from Tony Seba here. Tony Seba is a speaker, author, Silicon Valley entrepreneur, and lecturer at Stanford's Continuing Studies program who specializes in disruptive technologies. He's got an awesome talk that I'll link to in the card here. It goes about an hour long, gets really into the specifics and details of some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about. It's really worth checking out. Guy knows what he's talking about. Although I should say I kind of used his video as a basis for some of the predictions I make here, so it's not all him. Don't go sending him hate mail if you disagree with me. All right, so when people talk about autonomous cars, you might often hear them talk about different levels of autonomy, but you might not know exactly what those levels are. I know I didn't, so let's talk about that real quick. So there are 5 levels of autonomous driving. This was created in 2013 by the US National Traffic Highway and Safety Administration, and they are as follows. Level 0, which isn't really a level at all. This is what we've been doing since the car was invented. A human being doing everything, no automation whatsoever. Level 1 is where humans do all the driving, but there are specific functions the car can take over, things like traffic-aware cruise control and collision avoidance systems. In Level 2, we add things like lane keeping, where the car can steer itself to stay inside the lane and accelerate and decelerate using information about the driving environment. In Level 2 automation, the driver can take their hands off the wheel and their feet off the pedals at the same time, but must always be ready to take control when needed. This is basically where we are right now. Level 3 autonomy is actually kind of controversial because it's not really as defined as the other levels. It's fully autonomous, but not fully autonomous. The car can drive you where you need to go, navigate to a location, read stoplights and signs, change lanes without the driver input and all that, but the driver still must be ready to take over at a moment's notice. And the reason Level 3 is considered controversial is because a lot of people think that having this level of autonomy where a person still has to take over can lead to sort of a dangerous complacency, which we're already seeing a little bit too much of. So many argue that we should skip straight to Level 4, which is probably what you think of when you hear the term fully autonomous. In Level 4, vehicles can perform all driving functions with no human intervention for an entire trip. In fact, the car can drive without a driver at all. The only caveat here is that the car is restricted to what they call operational design domain, meaning it's restricted to well-mapped areas and ideal road conditions. And lastly is Level 5. This is human-level driving in any condition, including roads that haven't been mapped and even off-road conditions. In Level 5, no driver is necessary, even steering wheels aren't needed. Now, most people consider Level 4 to be the level at which things really become disruptive because that's when things like autonomous ride-sharing becomes a thing. And this is the golden goose. This is what literally hundreds of companies are working on because the company that perfects this and corners this market is going to be one of the most successful companies in the history of the world. Think about the urban bicycle explosion that took place just a few years ago and the whole electric scooter thing that popped up and made billion-dollar companies out of nowhere. This is going to make that look like a lemonade stand. Because for the first time, anybody that can afford to buy a car will have a source of income completely independent of their own time and energy. Uber drivers will become Uber owners, people who make money while they make money. A car would be an investment for the common car owner, and enterprising people with a lot of money could buy multiple cars and make multiple fat stacks. Now, I mentioned Uber a second ago, but really the leader in this category is probably going to be Tesla because they've already talked openly about creating a Tesla network where people who drive their cars can just, let ride hailing take over and they can let their cars go off and pick people up and drive people around and make money while they go to work. In fact, this kind of dictated some of the design decisions in the Model 3. Things like a glove compartment that you can only open through the software and a little interior hidden camera. Now, I know a lot of you people out there looking at that and saying, I would never let somebody ride around in my car without me being in it. And my response to you is, good for you. You don't have to do it. But a lot of people will want to do that. A lot of people will see that as a wise financial decision. So car makers are incentivized to push for automation because if they had that out there, then their customers would have ways to make money, but also the car makers will get a little cut of that ride-sharing profits. That's just free money. Which is why General Motors bought Cruise Automation in 2016, and Ford actually plans to start testing versions of their cars, autonomous versions of their cars in Washington, D.C. this year. But the real big money for these automakers is the idea of being able to sell fleets to companies like Uber and Lyft. Uber has been super aggressive on autonomous driving for a few years now, with autonomous test cars on the streets of Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Toronto, and Phoenix, where, yes, tragically one of their cars struck and killed a pedestrian in March of last year. Since then, they have scaled back on this program, kind of only going along planned routes and driving at slower speeds, but they still see this technology as the key to their success in the future. Because their biggest expense as a company is driver payments. They take 25% of each fare, and the other 75% goes to the drivers. But let's say they had an autonomous car that could drive 24 hours a day. We can make it 23 for maintenance and refueling, averaging around 20 miles driven per hour, charging even $1 a mile with no fees. That car could make $460 a day, $3,220 a week, and $13,800 per month. Even if they spent $100,000 on each car, it would be completely paid off in less than a year, and after that, it would just be pure profit. It's for this reason that basically every transportation company in the world is working on this technology. Ford, Toyota, GM, Volvo, Intel, Uber, and Hyundai, between them, they have invested $21 billion in self-driving. This is happening, and it's happening fast. Toyota and Honda are both pushing to get driverless cars on the streets of Tokyo by the year 2020. Why 2020? Because the Olympics are going to be in Tokyo in 2020 and they want to show off their technology to the rest of the world. Ford CEO Mark Fields said that they're going to have a Level 4 autonomy car in 2021. Volvo and Fiat Chrysler made the same prediction. Renault Nissan's aiming for full autonomy on the highways in 2021, full autonomy in the cities in 2025. And Daimler simply says sometime in the early 2020s. So this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky tweet from Elon Musk. These are actual CEOs of actual car companies making actual plans to have actual self-driving cars in the actual next few years. Now, as for my prediction as to when all this is going to happen, when this big disruption is going to take place, you know, there's so much money being put into it and so many people working on it. I think the trend is actually going to accelerate in the next few years, but I also think there's some intangibles that we can't quite know that could pop up, and I know there's a lot of regulatory frameworks that need to be set up. So I'm going to be a little bit conservative and say 2023, 2024. There's been a growing list of semi-autonomous features that have rolled out just in the last few years. So if this trend continues, I think that the technology will be there. I think that's not going to be a problem. I think really it's more of a regulatory thing. So let's just say we get there by 2023, at least to the level that companies like Uber and Lyft can start, you know, purchasing fleets of autonomous cars that may be geo-fenced into certain areas in certain cities and whatnot. What would the automotive landscape look like at that time? What kind of car would they actually want to get to do this? And yeah, this is the point where you go, oh my God, he's going to talk about EVs. Yes, I'm going to talk about EVs. Because by the time 2023 gets here, the cost of EVs will be on parity with ICE cars. The cost of batteries have gone down year over year at an accelerated rate. And as more car companies start getting on the EV bandwagon, more companies have started popping up to start creating batteries for these EVs to use. 12 different mega factories from companies such as LG Chem, BYD, SDI, Foxconn, Samsung, and of course Tesla are slated to come online by 2020. And it's expected that by 2024, batteries will reach the magic number of $100 per kilowatt hour, at which point they will actually be cheaper to buy than gas cars. If you look at the cost of EVs that get more than 200 miles of range, it's declined massively just in the last 2 years. This year, there are 4 different options in the mid $30,000 price range. Following this curve, by the year 2022, new EVs will sell in the low $20,000. And by the way, if you're thinking 200 miles of range is still too little for you, keep in mind, this isn't for people to just go out and buy. This is for autonomous fleets from people like Uber just to drive people around town. This isn't something you're going to be taking your family on vacation in. So if these guys are just buying these cars to make money with them, and EVs cost the exact same amount to purchase as regular gas cars, it all comes down to the cost of maintenance and the cost of fuel, and the overall cost of ownership, and here is where EVs have always won out over gas cars. First of all, the price of electricity is just cheaper than the price of gas. According to AAA in 2017, gas cars average about 10 cents per mile, and EVs average about 4 cents per mile. And there are drastically fewer moving parts in EVs, meaning far less maintenance. No oil changes, no belts replaced, no carburetors, no spark plugs, no transmission, no water pump, the list goes on and on. In fact, a Los Angeles-based company called Tesloop, which is sort of an all-Tesla cab service, just announced this last week that one of their Model X's had just hit 350,000 miles. And over the course of all those miles, they had only spent $18,000 in services. The main cost being brake pads and a couple of axle shafts. There was actually nothing that needed to be repaired or replaced in the drivetrain. Of course, everybody wants to know what happened to the battery over that time. Well, they reported that it had 13% degradation, meaning when they first got it, it charged all the way up to 245 miles of range, and after 350,000 miles of driving, it charges up to 215 miles of range. So 13% degradation, but just to hammer this point home a little bit, they drove this car 350,000 miles in 2 years. It basically just drove back and forth between Los Angeles and Palm Springs every single day. And they did only supercharger charging. They basically did the worst things you can possibly do for an EV. It got the worst treatment you can imagine, and it went down 13%. An average driver driving 15,000 miles a year would take over 23 years to reach that kind of degradation. Just saying. So to compare these costs to an internal combustion engine, I found this chart on yourmechanic.com that averaged out the cost per 25,000 miles, which goes up over time as more parts get worn down. For example, the first 25,000 miles, it only costs $1,400, including oil changes and scheduled maintenance, but from 175 to 200,000 miles, it goes up $5,000 during that time. Which sounds right to me. My last car got up to 160,000 miles, and the last time I had it serviced, I literally had to get a loan so that I could pay for it. But according to these numbers, a similar gas car at 350,000 miles would have cost $58,000 in maintenance. That's $40,000 more than the EV. Add to that the average cost of gas at 10 cents a mile, you're looking at another $35,000 right there, adding up to a total of $93,000 for the cost of ownership of this car. An EV averaging 4 cents a mile would add another $14,000, bringing the grand total to $32,000. So with those numbers as a guide, let's just say you're a ride-hailing service and you want to run a fleet of 100 autonomous vehicles and you have your choice of gas or EV cars that are selling for the same price, let's just say $25,000 each. Assuming you totally rag your cars out like the Tesloop guys did, putting 350,000 miles in the car in just 2 years, you can expect to spend literally twice as much if you go with the ICE cars. And this is only for a 2-year period. If they keep the cars closer to 5 years, the difference gets way more stark. No businessman in their right mind would do this. But Joe, what about long charging times? I mean, every minute that car is sitting there charging, it's not making any money for them. Yeah, but it's a fleet of cars. They can rotate them out. And besides, there's going to be slow times, and it only takes about 20 minutes to get the car up and back on the road again. But there is one more trend that's just the icing on the cake, and that is, what if these companies didn't have any fuel costs whatsoever? Because not only the cost of batteries and EVs are going down, the cost of solar is going down as well. Following the trends, the cost of PV panels would get as low as 20 cents per watt in 2022, with the total cost of installation at around 70 cents per watt, according to a study in PV Magazine. So an aggressive company could just buy up a strategically located car lot, cover it with solar panels, use it as a home base to charge and run their operations, and pay nothing for fuel whatsoever. Or at least get a significant, reduction in costs. And that is just simply not an option for a gas car, which is another reason EVs are going to win out here. Now, according to Tony Seba, he thinks that once this ride-hailing, this transportation as a service model starts to take over, that first of all, internal combustion engines are going to be completely obsolete in only 5 years, and then by the year 2030, 80% fewer cars will be on the road. And he argues that eventually car ownership itself will completely go away as transportation as a service becomes the norm. I'm not completely sold on this. Yes, as the next generation grows up with autonomous cars, giving them transportation at their beck and call, they'll start to see driving as something that just, old people do. Kind of like the way kids are today with information, they're so used to just having information at their fingertips, at their beck and call whenever they want it. The idea of, going out and buying a set of encyclopedias, well, it's just something old people used to do. But I do think that transitioning away from car ownership is going to be difficult for some people, and I count myself as one of them. I like having a car. Some of my best moments in my life were spent, driving down the highway, blaring music and singing at the top of my lungs. Some of the most impactful moments I've had in my life took place in my car. I drove away from the worst breakup in my life in my car. I drove away from the hospital where I said goodbye to my grandmother. Driving my car was when I processed some very big things in my life. and that connects you to something. You know, getting rid of my car last year, that was hard for me. You know, I had that car for 13 years. I had some really high highs and really low lows in that car. And I don't know, the idea that a generation of people will just not have that experience is kind of sad to me. But then again, maybe they won't miss it. Maybe they'll connect with something else instead. Or maybe, crazy thought, they'll actually connect with other people. I mean, come on. That's just crazy talk. The main point of all this is that there is a confluence of multiple trends that are going to cause a disruption like we have never seen before. It may feel like it's happening slowly right now, but it won't for very long. So spaketh Jostradamus. What do you think? Do you agree with these predictions of mine, or do you dare speaketh against the seer of all seers? Let me know in the comments. Disruption brings opportunity to those who have the skills to seize it, which is why I'm happy to promote today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with over 20,000 classes and pretty much anything you could possibly want to learn, from technology to business to accounting, photography, you name it. Since we're talking about the businesses that are going to lead this disruption, a good place to start might be the Icons of Business playlist, featuring thought-provoking interviews with gurus like Simon Sinek, Gary Vaynerchuk, and Guy Kawasaki. Learn from the masters. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on must-know topics so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. And viewers of this channel get 2 free months of Skillshare Premium if you sign up at Skillshare.com/JoeScott. Join the millions that are learning new stuff on Skillshare every single day. Just go to Skillshare.com/JoeScott. Links down in the description. Thanks so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters, the Answer Files on Patreon that keep the lights on around here, forming a great community. They're helping me out. I love you guys so much. There's some new people that have joined. I got to murder the names real quick. We got Rick McKenzie, Robert Bergman, Jorn Albring, Mohammed Al-Yanami, Gunky Chicken, Nicola Tobias Hessler, Hunter, Madeline Pettis, Graham Scott, Adel Arzogalin, Clay Menz, Brad Corlett, Fabio Conte, love that name, Michael Cross, Matite Jesperson, Paul Chalice, Michael Hardy, Brooks Brown, Cameron Ross, DS, William Gregory, Chris Kibbe, and John L. Stafford. Thank you guys so much. If you'd like to join them and get access to early videos and exclusive content that other people don't get to see, you can go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe. Please like and share this video if you liked it, and if this is your first time here, I invite you to check out maybe this video. Google thinks you might like that. There's others as well. And if you like those, maybe do subscribe, because I come back with videos just like this every Monday. As always, sexy t-shirts available in the store at answerswithjoe.com/shirts. Thanks again for watching. You guys go out now, have an eye-opening rest of the week, and I'll see you on Monday. Love you guys. Take care.